Okay, looks like we have everybody in. So welcome to Maximizing SOLIDWORKS Performance on Next Generation Dell and NVIDIA Workstations. I'm your host and also presenter Scott Hamilton, and also presenting with me today is Stephen Darcey, electrical manager at GoEngineer, and Akshay Joshi was with Dell, and he'll be talking about our various programs that you guys have access to as GoEngineer customers. So without further ado, welcome aboard, and I'm going to hand it over to Stephen.
All right. Hi, guys. Go ahead, next slide. So I'm going to talk quickly over a little bit about GoEngineer. We have offices all the way from East Coast to West Coast, which means better tech support hours. So if you're in Central, then it's pretty much like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which is pretty awesome. All right, next slide. Our mission is really at GoEngineer to provide design manufacturing tools. We have expertise, really good application engineers that enable you guys, the customer, to reduce cost, risk, and time required to go live with your new technologies and products. All right, next slide. We provide, to do that, we provide classroom training. We are going live. COVID's coming up a little bit but here and there, but we do have live classes now. During COVID, we've been doing a whole lot with our online training and building up our online resources. We have a lot of YouTube videos, channels, and we also do certification in all of the SOLIDWORKS products that we teach and train on. All right, next slide. With that, we do, of course, world-class tech support. We also do 3D printing training, and we also do print parts as services, and we do a lot of other technical things as services as well. So just depending on what you want, just get with the salesperson and we'll see if we can quote it for you. All right, next slide. Go ahead and switch all the way through. So we also do PDM, which is your data management, checking in and checking out of files. So when you're dealing with large data sets, that's a key to making your larger assemblies and stuff actually work better. We can host those at your location, or we can host those at GoEngineer as well. So we provide services for that. We also do rendering and animation services and any kind of CAD automation. So if you're doing any type of a ETO or engineer to order products, we can help you try to automate those things. All right, next slide.
All right, thank you, Stephen.
Yep.
Thanks for sharing the GoEngineer benefits for everybody. Guys, before I dig into my presentation, I just want to remind you that there is a question and answer section on the GoToWebinar. You can type in your questions and we'll try to answer those either via the text answers, or we do have a section at the end, a period of time that we have for Q&A. So if we can't get to them, we'll try to read those out, and Stephen and I and Akshay will try to answer all the questions you might have. So please take advantage of that, if you will. All right, so welcome aboard again. I wanted to talk about a couple things. First of all, I'm going to talk about some industry trends that I'm seeing in the engineering and manufacturing industry. And then I'm going to talk about a few things related to, really the subject matter here, optimizing and specifying, the best workstations for SOLIDWORKS. And I'm going to talk about the value proposition of a workstation, how you kind of justify that to your management chain. And I'm going to share some recommendations with you. And then Akshay is going to cover our Dell Expert Network, which is a program that we've co-developed with GoEngineer to really help the GoEngineer customers take advantage of all the great discounts, resources that the companies offer. So I hope you'll find it very interesting. So let's dive right in. First of all, industry trends that I'm seeing. So I talk to a lot of customers. I go to a lot of trade shows, but there's been a little bit of lull lately for obvious reasons. But these are kind of the things that I'm hearing about and experiencing in talking to our partners and our customers. So I want to give you a little bit of insight how this is changing the industry, and what you want to think about over the next few years about how your process might change and how you can utilize these resources that we're providing to take advantage of these trends. So first of all, I'm seeing a huge advancements in the area of simulation analysis, things like digital twins, generative design. These type of things are really enabling a whole new design paradigm. The fact that now it's very easy to translate a CAD model into an analysis or simulation tool. And in fact, a lot of the vendors, and SolidWorks has done a great job of that, of actually integrating simulation and analysis right into the CAD environment. So it's fairly easy to build a part and analyze it almost in real time. So that's really changing the way that we do design today, and I'll talk more about why that's so important when we get to justifying the workstation. Generative design is another area, and another term for that I think is optimization. You may have heard in the industry, and this is really about taking your design, defining some parameters that can change, and letting the system really run thousands of simulations, and directedly making changes on your part to meet design goals. So this is a pretty interesting area. I remember when I was an engineer many years ago, I took a class in optimization, and you could do very little, and it was all done by hand. Or I had one of those HP calculators with the plug-in modules, and this was something that was very cumbersome. But now with the new technology, generative design and optimization is something that we can do every day and really see tremendous benefits from. The other area is multi-user collaboration. Now, we saw an uptick in that certainly over the last 10 years as mobile workstations were introduced and people were able to work from home, and the coffee shops or on the road, wherever it might be. But we've certainly seen a tremendous demand for this in the last few years because of COVID. Everybody was working remotely. So these collaboration tools are super important. And Dell is offering, some solutions there that I'll talk about, PC over IP and remoting, where you can access your workstation remotely from anywhere in the world. And then next generation software tuned to the workstation hardware. We're seeing where partners, software developers, are enhancing their software to take advantage of multi-core CPUs and GPU acceleration. And a great example of that on the SolidWorks side is SolidWorks Visualize, right? That is CPU, or it is CPU rendering, but it can also be GPU accelerated tremendously. And we've seen it's almost real-time rendering now at this point, because some of the enhancements that SolidWorks has put in the tool, and they're actually taking advantage of some of the things I'm going to talk about in the last bullet about artificial intelligence. So I'll talk more about that when we get there. Another huge boom we've seen over the last few years. Now there's been a little bit of a lull recently, again because of COVID. Really has been changing our lives. But the ability to do AR and VR and photorealistic rendering, VR in the before COVID, every event I went to, it seemed like everybody had a VR demo to show in their booth, because it was really engaging and very powerful as a tool for communication, for collaboration, for sharing, for design review. whatever it may be. And I would expect that we're going to see that come back very rapidly once we get back to the semi-normal, out of the COVID era. So there's a lot of great work that SolidWorks has done there. So I'm sure you guys will be taking advantage of that more and more in the future. Now, when we talk about integrated design, that's pretty interesting, because what I'm seeing in the industry when we talk about things like additive manufacturing, new IoT technologies, we're able to collect, first of all, create parts that we've never created before using these new manufacturing techniques. But not only that, we're able to instrument them using, the Internet of Things and collect data on how either, designs function in the testing environment or on a factory floor or in real use cases with customers, collect that data and bring it back into the design process. So this has really created, this integrated design philosophy throughout the whole product life cycle. So we're seeing some really interesting things from that perspective. And then finally, artificial intelligence, deep learning, data science. There's a lot of different names for this technology. And I think that's really because there's just a lot of different uses out there. Again, another example we see from SolidWorks is when you look at SolidWorks visualization, one of the components is the AI-based denoising, which actually allows you to render even faster than you have been before, because the system doesn't even have to finish the rendering process, and it can start putting a denoising algorithm on top of that that's based on a deep learning algorithm, and generate that render even faster than you were able to in the past. So a lot of great things we're seeing as far as the technology innovation. And I want to step back a little bit and talk about what's making that possible. What's the roadmap been look like, and where are we going? We call this workforce or workplace transformation. And back when I was an engineer many years ago, we were in the area that we call wave one, or destination computing. So you went to the office and you had these big, usually Unix or Linux based systems that you sat in front of, and this was kind of the beginning of the true adoption of CAD. We all say CAD now, computer-aided design. It's kind of an oxymoron in a way, because everybody is doing it electronically now. But that was the way we did it back then. And then we got to this era of portable computing, or wave number two. And I would say that probably really started taking over 10 years ago maybe, where it really became possible for true engineers to, have portable compute resources, mobile workstations that were really capable of doing the things that engineers need to do day after day, right? Because engineers, of course, we all know we have higher demands than your average, office productivity worker. So that was really wave two. And now we've kind of got into wave three, which we call immersive computing. So where we're getting this deeper level of integration, a lot of things I talked about, this real-time feedback, integrated design, AR and VR, AI, haptics, all of these technologies that are allowing us to really change the design paradigm and make it much more creative, much more innovative, and just making all of these new paradigms possible. But ultimately, what's really driving that is the compute performance, right? Because of the innovations that Dell has brought to market, as well as our partners like NVIDIA, Intel, and many others, we're able to deliver workstations that are offering orders of magnitude, of performance over what you've seen in the past. In every generation of product we release, the performance dramatically increased. So this is really helping drive a lot of these trends or these transformations we're seeing in the industry. So I want to talk a little bit about, the cost or value of a workstation, because as I'm out talking to customers, and I talk, mostly to end users, and one of the biggest questions I get is, not only, well, what workstation should I buy, but, how can you help me justify that workstation to my manager, to a financial person, to the owner of the company I work for, whatever it may be, whoever has the purse strings, right? And I think this is a really interesting way of looking at it, because historically the way things happen is usually somebody will come to me and say, Scott, I have a budget of, whatever, XYZ for a workstation. And I always tell people, well, let's step back from that a minute. And first of all, most importantly, understand what your needs are. And then let's talk about the value that workstation can bring to your company. And then you can think about the cost of the workstation and the budget that you want to allocate for that. So here are some of the things that I like to talk about, and I try to get people to think about when they're trying to justify a workstation. There's many, many ways to save the company money or create extra value by purchasing the best workstation you can. And these are just a few of those, and I'll kind of talk through these. First of all, labor, okay? I'm sure most of you on the call here are probably engineers, and you guys are all very important. We like to call it mission critical people to the business, because you're the people that are designing the products for your company, the lifeblood of the company, right? So it's very important that your companies look at trying to make you as productive as possible, because you are that mission critical, one of those mission critical people in the business. So how can we make you as an engineer more efficient, more productive? And what does that do? That reduces labor costs, or it allows you to do more work. So there's tremendous benefits there. And then when we're talking about prototyping, right? We've seen in the last 5 years, especially with all the innovations in simulation and analysis, that many customers are able to dramatically reduce the number of physical prototypes they make, because they can all do that in a digital realm now, right? Using simulation and analysis tools, digital twins, and these type of technologies. Which dramatically not only reduces the cost of the prototypes, but also really pushes the prototyping phase more into the front end of the design process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Time to market, another huge one. Time to market can save money in the sense that, you can develop more products or get them to market faster, but it also could have some other tremendous benefits when you look at, for example, what if you could beat your competition to market by 6 months? How much value could that bring? That could be worth millions and millions of dollars, by delivering that extra time to market. Creativity is an interesting one, because I think, most people don't think engineers are that creative, and I would beg to differ with them. I think there's a lot of creativity in engineering, especially as a design engineer. It's really about ideation, coming up with ideas, working through those ideas, building models of those, analyzing them, and then, actually iterating, right? It's all about iteration, design something, test it, make a change, test it again, iterate, and use your creativity as part of that process. And being able to try different designs, or analyze things in more detail more quickly will increase your creativity, and then ultimately, in my mind, enable you to design better products, and that brings us to the point of quality, right? Because you can try more options, you can come up with a better design, you can analyze something more thoroughly and discover problems more earlier in the design process that can help you drive that additional quality. So, when you look at the amount of money that you can save your company or value that you can bring through all of these other things, the cost of the workstation honestly is almost insignificant to the benefits that you can bring here. So what I like to tell people is think about all of these things, and then it's really easy to justify a workstation, even a very expensive one, because just think about it this way. If you can be 10% more productive as an engineer, and you look at the labor cost alone, 10% of somebody's, salary and overhead, it's easily $10,000 a year if you can deliver that additional productivity, and that's quite easy to do. So, and that's not even accounting for all these other things, right, that I talked about. So think about it that way when you're trying to justify a workstation. So I talked about, this product life cycle and, iteration and stuff. And I think this is a really important way to look at it. If we look at the entire product life cycle or project life cycle from start to end, and looking at the yellow graph here, the cost of change, right? We all know that when we're in the front end of our life cycle, it's easy to make changes because, we're still almost always purely in the digital realm, right? So we can try different ideas, we can make changes, we can iterate very, very quickly with very little cost, right? But as we get later and later in our project or product life cycle, and we start committing, especially to physical type things like, building out a production line or start making digital or physical prototypes. And then, even when we get to the point of, true manufacturing and delivering products to customers, the cost of making changes goes up dramatically, right? So if we look at the green curve here, really our opportunity for changes are up in the front end in that digital realm. And then again, as we get towards the end, the opportunity to make changes, drops rapidly. So by being able to, take advantage of all these trends and the power of the workstation, it allows us to stay in this iteration cycle more and more and get all of those benefits that we talked about before. So you might ask, well, how do you stay in that iteration cycle? How do you really take advantage of it? And it's kind of like that old adage in, in real estate, what's the most important thing in real estate? Location, location, location. And for, engineers, workstation users in general, we always, ask our customers what's the most important thing, and they consistently tell us performance, 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 right? That's what our users care about. And why do they care about that? That's because that leads to all that productivity. And if you think about it, I think a lot of people know this inherently, but have really never put any, kind of research behind it. And I ran across this study that was done literally, we're getting 30 plus years ago. And there's a reference to it in here, a link that you can look at. But the study was called The Economic Value of Rapid Response Time. And I won't go through all the details, I'm just going to cut to the chase. But basically what they found was that if a computer system responds to your input and gives you the feedback in roughly less than 1 second, then your productivity is dramatically increased, and you can see the yellow curve indicating productivity. You know, this is an approximation of the results they saw. And, you know, as we all know, when you're using a computer to do any task, you know, whether it's just word processing or, you know, browsing the internet, and of course, when you're doing complex engineering tasks, when it takes a long time for the computer to respond, you lose your train of thought. You know, you're waiting, and then you think about something else. And then once the computer finally responds, you have to re-engage your mind, you know, to get back focused to what you're doing. And of course, when things take a really long time, you know, then you do things like take a coffee break or go out to lunch, right? And come back, right? And, you know, obviously in those situations, your productivity is just really, really poor. So this is one of the things that we really focus on in our precision business, is increasing this response time to increase your productivity and then be able to deliver all those things we talked about, okay? And I like to think of it as being in the zone, or that train of thought, you know. And we've all experienced this when we have a great idea in our head and we're adding it, we're building the model, and it's responding really quickly. We're making a change. Oh yeah, that looks really good. Okay, let's flip it around. Oh, that's wrong. But everything's just flowing, and we're in that really creative flow in the zone. We feel like we're, you know, really getting a lot of stuff done, and that's where we want to keep you guys, right? Again, going back to, you know, you guys are the mission critical employees in your company, so that's what we're trying to help you do, be as productive as possible. So how do we do that? Well, precision workstations, they're not just designed to run applications, they're custom built for them, and I'll talk about some of these things, right? First of all, ISV certification. You know, we work with many ISV partners, and, you know, SOLIDWORKS or Dassault is one of our most important partners, and all of the Dell workstations are certified to run SOLIDWORKS products, okay? And there's a slide later that has a link where you can look that up. We also have a tool called the Dell Precision Optimizer, which is the new name is called just Dell Optimizer, but there are precision specific functions in there, and I'll get into a little bit of those later, but it helps you optimize the performance of your workstation. Also, our workstation products are very customizable, configurable, and expandable, because we know typical workstation users need a lot of flexibility. You know, they may want a smaller storage device or a very large one. They may need a small number of cores on their CPU for one task, but they might need many cores, or they might need an NVIDIA graphics card that is a mid-range card or a very high-end card, depending on what they're doing. So we offer all of those capabilities, and we make our solutions very scalable. In addition to that, you know, for engineering, when you're doing especially analysis work, the results count. So we do offer, you know, error correcting code memory and Dell reliable memory technology to give you that extra level of assurance that you're not getting any random memory errors that may cause either blue screens or inaccuracies in calculations. And then another important part, you know, we as engineers or industrial designers or visualization specialists, all, you know, we need displays that will support our needs, you know, whether it's high resolution so you can see all the complex details of the part you're designing, or a premier color that is a color accurate monitor, so when you do a rendering, you share it with somebody, you know, the colors that you specified are the colors that you see on the screen, and it would match, you know, what you would see in real life. So you know, you can see what you're going to get there. And we offer, you know, a bunch of tools to help you with remote management, as well as remoting itself. I talked about, you know, everybody working remotely these days. You know, we have We do offer Teradici PC over IP technology, which allows you to remotely connect to your workstation from essentially anywhere in the world. So you can take advantage of that if you're traveling, or you want to leave your workstation in the office, but you need to access it remotely from your house. And then, of course, we have a world-class ecosystem of things that you might want to use with your workstation, whether that's a backpack to carry your mobile workstation around with you, a 3D connection devices for better input, X-Rite colorimeters, docking stations, et cetera, et cetera. So you can really outfit your working environment. So let me take a minute and talk about the Dell Precision product portfolio. We just launched a bunch of new products over the last few months, and we're really excited about those. We essentially refreshed our entire mobile product line. We just announced another tower workstation, and I'll get into those details in a minute. But let me explain how we kind of organize our products. We actually, kind of bundle them into 3 different series. We call them 3000, 5000, and 7000 series. And those are really bucketed that way. If you look at 3000 series being more entry level, 5000 being premium design and really good performance, and then 7000, being maximum performance, expandability, and capability, right? That's how we kind of differentiate our product. So just to give you an example, a 3000 series entry mobile workstation is, usually a smaller, less powerful workstation. That's why we call it entry. But it's very, very suitable for a lot of CAD workflows. And I just want to, kind of remind you guys, we call it entry, but it's a workstation. So all of the workstations are, what I would call, very powerful and performant, compared to your average, business computer type of PC. And in fact, some of our mobile workstations, even in the 7000 series, will rival or surpass some of the tower workstations in their capabilities, right? We offer our 5000 series products, which are kind of premium design for those. These are like, especially in the mobile 5000 series products, these are our thin and light mobile workstations for people that are highly mobile. They want something that's a little more elegant for when they travel, thinner, lighter, like 4 pounds or under. So it's much easier for them, to travel and be mobile, but yet still have great performance, right? And we just recently announced or launched our all new 14-inch performance mobile workstation earlier this year. And then on the 7000 series, this is really, we call it the heavy iron, right? These are the most powerful machines we offer. And just to give you an example, our 7000 series mobile workstations will have the highest end mobile CPU you can buy and the most powerful NVIDIA graphics, all the way up to the A5500 graphics, so you can do things like SOLIDWORKS visualize even on your mobile workstation, right? And you'll get excellent performance. And then, our tower workstations and our rack workstations, these have the capability, these are really like the compute, performance systems, and I like to call them supercomputers at your desk. They offer capabilities like up to dual 28 core CPUs and 3 or 4 NVIDIA GPUs in these machines. So these can be, these are really good for running multiple simulation and analysis runs, or, again, doing your SOLIDWORKS visualize work, things like that. And we are really excited. We just announced just a few weeks ago our very first AMD-based, Threadripper-based workstation. So that's coming out. We announced it. It'll be coming out in a few weeks. So that's really exciting news there. And one other thing I'll talk about is, in addition to mobile workstations and tower workstations, we have rack workstations. We have two of those. We have an entry-level 3930 that you see here, and then a 2U rack workstation, which is called the 7920 rack. Now, what are the differences, advantage of these products? Well, these products are very similar to the equivalent tower one. So for example, we have a 7920 tower, and we have a 7920 rack workstation. So the reason the names are so similar is because, you know, the configuration, the capability of the products is almost identical. But the advantage of the rack workstations are that now these can be put in a machine room, a data center, in a standard server rack, and you can access them remotely using that PC over IP technology. So now what you've done is you've removed the space requirements, the heat, and the noise from the working environment. All you have at your desk is a laptop computer or what we call a thin client, which is a really small device that sits at your desk with your mouse monitor and keyboard, and you connect remotely. And because we've worked really closely with Strategist on this, you will have a, just like desk side experience with that environment. So it will perform just as good as if it was sitting right next to you. In some cases, even better, because one of the advantages of putting the workstation in the data center is you can connect it to high-speed network backbones. For example, if you're using a PDM system, and that's usually on a separate server, right, where you're managing all your data, the rack workstation can be in that same data center and maybe connected to a 10 gig E or a fiber network. So now you can transfer the files back and forth extremely fast. So that does have some advantages there. All right, so I told you I'd talk about Dell Optimizer. So let's take a look at this. Dell Optimizer is a tool that allows you to really fine-tune the workstation to your needs. And there's a lot of different components here. And this kind of table is showing you what the differences are. So there's all of these things like intelligent privacy, where there's features that we can turn off the screen automatically after a certain amount of time, and we can do facial recognition when only you stand in front of your computer. We have express sign-in. We have express charge, where you can charge your computer in different ways to meet your needs. Like maybe you need to charge it really fast because you're going on the road in an hour and a half, or maybe you want to optimize the way that you charge to optimize the battery life, or various things there. Express connection is another great feature. For example, you can do network teaming, where you use both your wired network and your Wi-Fi together to increase network performance. And there's all kinds of interesting technologies. Intelligent audio, which is becoming more and more important because we're now all on remote web calls and stuff like that. So there's a lot of great features there. Now, one of the most important things that is only available on the Precision Workstation is the analytics section. And this is really important because it does a couple of things. Number one, it allows you to build custom profiles to optimize the workstation based on your exact software and the way you use it. The way it works is you turn on the optimizer feature and you do your normal day-to-day tasks, and the optimizer is constantly measuring and analyzing the demands on the system, and then it will tweak various internal settings on the computer to give you maximum performance. Once you do that, it builds a profile for that use case, and now the next time you start up SOLIDWORKS, for example, it can automatically enable that profile to maximize your performance. The other thing it allows you to do is do a very thorough analysis of what's happening on your system in a graphical form. So you can see, you know, what are the GPU, what are the CPU, what is the memory, network, you know, performance and utilization, which will allow you to see if there's bottlenecks in the system and discover where you might be able to even enhance the performance even more by making, you know, physical hardware changes. Like, for example, you know, if you see that you're constantly running at, you know, 80–90% memory usage, then that's probably a pretty good indication that you're going to have some slowdowns, and that adding more memory would, you know, increase your performance. So it's a really great tool that I encourage you to take advantage of. This is a free tool to all Precision users. It comes pre-installed on a workstation when you order it from the factory, or you can download it separately and install it. Because I know sometimes what happens is you guys, you know, order the computers and then your IT department gets it and they wipe the image and they put your corporate image on there, and then all of a sudden the Dell Optimizer is gone. So just remember, you can always download it from Dell.com. All right, so before I get into the recommendations, I want to talk a little bit about how we look at compute workloads in general, because there's really kind of two major buckets, and these are really important for you guys to understand when you're selecting, you know, your workstation. So we like to call it interactive and computational, and let me kind of define what those two things mean. So interactive work is really about when a user is sitting in front of the workstation and doing interactive type of work, like, you know, building your CAD model, right? You're constantly spinning the view around, making changes. There's a lot of input, whether it's keyboard, mouse, whatever it might be. And most of those type of tasks tend to be single-threaded, right? They use one CPU, and they use some graphics, of course, capability there. And the interactions and the functions that push and deliver the data to the graphics card tend to be single or lowly threaded, okay? So it only uses a few of the compute cores on your CPU. And SOLIDWORKS is a great example. A few years ago, you know, they did some optimization where, you know, really the entire design process was single threaded, but they did some great work, and they made portions of that, like rebuilding the model tree, transferring the data to the graphics card. They were able to add some more threading to that, and they dramatically increased the performance. But all of that being said, really the most important thing when you're doing that type of work is the CPU clock speed, right? It's all about that. If you look at the CPU specs, you know, you'll notice they have like a base and a turbo clock speed. So those are the most important. And you'll notice in a lot of the SOLIDWORKS provided recommendations, they will say 3 gigahertz or above for the clock speed of the CPU. And that's an interesting one, and can cause a little bit of confusion. So I really want to delve into this a little bit more to help you guys out. So if you look at the current speeds that are published for Intel processors, you will see basically two values: a base clock speed, which is kind of like the minimum it's going to run at, and a turbo, which is the highest it can run at, right? And so it turns out for most interactive workloads, because you're using few cores, the system can almost always run up towards the turbo rate, right? So just consider that, right? And you'll notice that in the latest generation of Intel Alder Lake CPUs, interestingly enough, if you compare the base clock speed to a previous gen, it actually went down a little bit. You know, and when I saw that, I was kind of concerned. I'm like, oh, whoa, we're going backwards here. But what actually has happened is there's been other optimizations in the CPU architecture that allows the system to even be more performant in these interactive workloads even with a lower base clock speed, okay? Not only that, they've enhanced the way the turbo boost works, so you're now able to take advantage of turbo boost even more than you have in the past. So when you see, the recommendation of 3 gigahertz or minimum, don't be concerned if the base clock is 2.5 gigahertz. Look at the turbo, and a lot of these new processors are 5 gigahertz or more. Then you're going to be more up in that area when you're doing interactive. Okay, so now let's talk about computational work. This is kind of the opposite, right? Usually computational work is something like a batch process that you just, hit the go button and you wait for it to compute. And that can be either computation on the CPU or the GPU. And, we can take some examples of that. For example, SOLIDWORKS Visualize is a perfect example of GPU computational work. So Visualize will use all the GPU resources you can throw at it, all those, every GPU these days has thousands of compute cores in it, and that will really take advantage of all of those and increase the performance dramatically. The same thing goes for example, SolidWorks simulation. That will take advantage of many CPU cores. So now cores become much more important than clock speed, okay? Now, clock speed will always help increase performance, right? But, when you add more cores to the package of a CPU, you do have to sacrifice some clock speed, but it's worth it because getting those more cores allows you to thread these processes much more efficiently. And you'll see, SolidWorks simulation will take advantage of 8, 10, 12 cores for that simulation. So now it's much better to look at, more multi-cores there to do that type of work, okay? So you can see on the left here, visualization, rendering, simulation analysis, really good for computational work. And your typical design and visualization in the sense of the VR part of it is highly constrained by that clock speed. So just think about that, when you're buying the workstations. Now, a lot of people ask me, what about, Scott, what if I'm doing both of those things? What do I do? Well, we've thought about that, and that's really where we, and Intel's done some great stuff, NVIDIA's done some great stuff to balance the systems that you can take advantage of both, right? Of computational workloads and interactive workloads by designing the system correctly. So in this presentation, and by the way, you guys are going to get a copy of this, so you don't have to scramble to write all this stuff down. I've provided some general recommendations here for, what you should buy based on what you're doing, right? So we've got design and analysis here for mobile workstations. We've got design and analysis for tower workstations, and then we've got visualization, et cetera, right? I'm not going to spend all the time going over this stuff because you guys won't remember it anyways. So you will see this in the final presentation that you get. And then also, Akshay is going to talk a little bit more about this, but on the Dell GoEngineer Expert Network page that we'll share with you, we have very specific recommendations for these use cases that you can reference from the internet. And by the way, we're updating those right now because I talked about all these new products we announced. We haven't published the new recommendations yet, but they're going to be there in probably in less than a week. So just stay tuned there, and Akshay will give you some more information about that, as well as the discounts you can get from the Expert Network website. I talked a little about accessories, so I won't really spend much time here, but Dell does offer all of these accessories and many more that you can take advantage of. We just highlighted kind of the most important ones for the engineering and manufacturing space here that you can take advantage of. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Akshay to talk about some of the information around the Dell GoEngineer Expert Network.
Hey, thank you, Scott. I hope I'm audible here. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that
all
was a
good,
great
Akshay. We can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect, perfect. No, that was a great presentation, Scott. Even I learned myself a lot. I work a lot more on the program management side, so this technical knowledge and the minutia and the thought that goes behind in putting these recommendations together, that's really awesome. So that is kind of the purpose of the partnership we have with GoEngineer, is that the performance of your applications and your day-to-day productivity is heavily dependent on the hardware as well, and getting the right hardware, which is why, here's the new GoEngineer blog that can help you get the right workstations in place. And that's what the partnership that we have put together here is to make it easier for you to make the purchases and make those purchases at an exclusive discount. We have had great relationship with GoEngineer. We have worked on quite a bit research papers and worked on different blogs and worked closely. All these configurations that we have on our website, they are put together by Scott and experts at GoEngineer team, fine tuning them, going back and forth. Uh, but at the same time, you do have the flexibility. So if your use case differs a little bit than common situations, we still allow you to make those changes. As Scott mentioned, all these precision workstations are highly, highly customizable. So you will be able to go to dell.com/GoEngineer and check those recommendations out, pick the right one, right system for you. We also have a special 10% off coupon for GoEngineer customers, as you can see it on the slide over here. If you click on that button, get coupon, it's gonna take you to a different page where you would enter your email and receive the code. And then that code is to be applied at checkout. So definitely do take advantage of that. We have a few folks who, forget to use that coupon at the end of the process, but it's 10% off. That's quite a deal that you would get, and that is in addition to any pricing promotions that we have running for those products on Dell website. So right now you will see that there are quite a lot of products that have 50% off, and then this 10% discount is stackable on top of that 50% off. So definitely a great deal. I imagine it will go away by July end or so. So, if you happen to be currently in the market exploring, then now would be a great time to take advantage of that. And then, of course, for all GoEngineer customers, my inbox is always open. If you have any questions, if you have a little bit different than usual situation where you want some more help, I can definitely work with you. I have been working with quite a lot of salespeople over at GoEngineer, and we go back and forth and we try to find that perfect solution for you. The whole purpose is getting the right equipment that you need at the right price. Then along with that, so speaking of getting the right equipment, often financing can be a factor that limits you from getting the right hardware. And again, the summary of Scott's presentation was that it is extremely essential for you end users who are essential employees. It is important to have the right hardware and that we don't have to compromise on the specification and technology that you're getting. So that is where Dell Financial Services can come in and offer you flexible ways to pay over time. So there are two different ways you can take advantage of Dell Financial Services. The Dell Business Credit is a lot more often used as a short-term solution. You can pay it off, over low monthly payments. That's going to help you stretch your cash flows that you have available. So often we also have exclusive offers with Dell Financial Services, and I can help you get you set up with it. It's a very quick and easy process. 99% of the times we're able to get it done all over a single phone call. So that's a great way to take advantage for any type of short-term financing. Right now, I know we do have a promotion till month end that offers you no interest for 90 days. If you pay the whole amount in full by 90 days, then you're able to stretch those payments out, which can be quite beneficial in the short term. But then we also have long-term plans. So technology rotation, it's amazing plan if you typically refresh your equipment every 3 to 4 years. You always want to keep that technological edge by having the latest and greatest systems. Then that would be a great program. You end up paying less than what you would pay to buy the equipment outright. And at the end of the term, you have the option to either pay the fair market value and own the equipment, or move to the latest and greatest technology, go with the next cycle of updated systems. And on the other hand, if you are provisioning for something a lot more long-term than that, then we also have a technology ownership type of leases where it's quite often very low interest rates. So I know for qualifying customers, currently we have 2.99 annual APR. By July end, that's what we're offering, which is a great rate. And you can lock it down and pay that amount over 3, 4, or 5 years, or whatever the term that you choose. And it's going to be great for long-term investments. You own the equipment at the end of it, so it's complete asset transfer, unlike technology rotation. And yeah, that's a great way to take advantage for any long-term purchases. So really the program is here to, again, to summarize, we want to do everything possible, give you any available support so that you can get the right equipment to be as productive as you can be. And by that, I pass it back to Scott.
Thank you, Akshay. Great, thank you. That's I learned some stuff from you as well. This is I can't believe how good this financial services program is. Thanks for sharing that. All right, so resources. This is I'm not going to go through this, but I just want to point out this slide is here. It will be in the copy of the deck that you get. It has all the links to everything we talked about, so you can reference it. I did mention the certification. So there's a link here to where you can look up the certifications from Dell. And of course, you guys are probably familiar with the same thing. SOLIDWORKS has a link for that as well. So we would like to ask you guys 2 poll questions, if you don't mind, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A session. All right, so am I driving the polls, guys?
They're up right now.
Okay, great. I'm not seeing them here, but that's okay.
We'll give a couple more seconds for people to respond.
Yeah, we've got a couple coming in.
And Pete, can we share the results on the screen, or should I just read them off?
Nope, I will push the results out here in a moment. We still have
great. You're the master. Thank
people
you.
still responding. Okay, Scott, I don't know if you see the results, but they're being shared now.
Okay, I don't see them, but I do see it in the little control
Dashboard
panel. So interesting. Okay, so we've got, it looks like about 31% 1 year old or less, 23% 2 years, 15.3, and and then 8 for 4 years, and 23% more than 4 years. Okay, guys, you guys in that last area there, you guys gotta you gotta use these tools to convince your management to get you a new workstation. You know, just mainly because of the tremendous performance gains you're going to see in upgrading. So thank you guys for sharing that. And then I don't see the second one. Maybe I need to scroll down. Oh, or did we do the second question, or we're doing that now?
You are just doing it now. So everybody should see the second questions regarding the applications that they're using.
Yep, perfect.
And we're starting to get responses now on that. So give a few seconds for people to respond.
Okay, and just a reminder, while we're waiting for the responses there, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section. We have a couple here that I'll address momentarily.
All right, let's see what we've got here. All right, Scott, we're sharing the results on the screen for everybody.
Great, thank you. All right, 50% SolidWorks design, 25%. Boy, how did those numbers come out like that? 1/2 SolidWorks design, 1/4 simulation, and 1/4 PDM. It's interesting how evenly they came out. But yeah, I guess that's to be expected. You know, most people are probably doing a lot of design work first. Now, just a reminder, you know, again, as I was discussing in the presentation earlier, you know, what we recommend for the hardware configuration is highly dependent on what you're doing. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at all those recommendations. And there's a description in there, you know, so you can read the descriptions of the use cases and decide which ones are most appropriate for you, because you may want different configurations based on what you're doing. So thank you guys for sharing that information with us. It's always interesting to see what people are doing, how they're using the tools. So we'll jump into the Q&A session. Let's see, our first question is about what are the features in Dell Workstations to help SOLIDWORKS visualize rendering software? Okay, that's a great question, and somebody answered it in the text, but I'll share that verbally with everybody. So really, you know, as you guys know, if you're using Visualize, that is a GPU-based mainly rendering system. You can use CPU too, but it's really optimized for the GPU rendering. And we've done a couple of things. Number one, we're always offering the latest and greatest NVIDIA GPUs, either in our mobile workstations or our tower workstation. So, for example, if you told me you were a Visualize user and doing lots of rendering, I would recommend, you know, a high-end NVIDIA GPU like an A4500 or A5500, which is available on both the tower and the mobile workstations. And then if you were like a really demanding user on the tower workstations, you could actually put 2 or 3 or even 4 of those type of GPUs into a tower workstation. And because SOLIDWORKS Visualize is so efficient at using those GPU cores, you know, it's almost a linear performance gain. So it's pretty incredible. So that's the answer to that one. Somebody else answer. Go ahead.
Scott, this is Don. Hi everybody. This is Don Breda with NVIDIA. I'm the alliance manager responsible for our business partnership with SolidWorks. Scott, that was a great answer on Visualize. I guess what I want everybody to know is that the real benefits in those NVIDIA GPUs to Visualize are these extra cores called these RT cores and tensor cores. The RT cores make the ray tracing and Visualize incredibly fast, much faster than before NVIDIA introduced these cores. And the tensor cores are the things that do the artificial intelligence denoising that Scott mentioned earlier today in the call, so that you don't have to wait until that render comes to full convergence by determining the paths of every single one of those rays. it uses AI to finish the rendering for you and happens in almost real time in a lot of cases. So if you're looking to do visualize on a great Dell workstation, look for an NVIDIA board that has a good number of RT cores and tensor cores, and visualize will just be screamingly fast. Sorry, Scott, go ahead, man.
Oh, no, thanks for jumping in, Don. I appreciate that. That was very useful information. Yeah, and that's really, goes back to another reason why to consider upgrading, your workstation to get those latest and greatest GPU technology from NVIDIA. Okay, somebody's asking, can we get a recorded version of the webinar? I believe we can. Yeah, Stephen answered that question. So yeah, there'll be a link sent out, I guess, for that later. Out of curiosity, what is the business version of the HTC Vive headset? I am not the expert on this, but I believe what it is there's some additional level of customer support that you get through that. Most Vives go out to consumers for consumer things, but corporations need different levels of support, and I believe it's mainly revolving around the support and manageability of that. And you can reach out to us again, we can get you a more detailed answer on that. Okay, somebody said running both design and simulation. I guess that was just somebody sharing some feedback of what they're doing. Could only choose one software application on the poll question. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. If we were trying to make that multiple selection, I guess that didn't work out, but that's okay. Thanks for your feedback there. Next question. Why does SOLIDWORKS require only Quadro or RTX? Why can't NVIDIA GeForce? What's the difference between the two? Well, I'm going to give you a high-level answer, and I'm going to let Don jump in as well. So if we look historically, the main reason, Quadro or professional GPUs, by the way, the name Quadro has kind of been sunsetted, but we equate that to the professional GPUs. Are there support for OpenGL? SOLIDWORKS is an application that has been developed using a library called OpenGL, Open Graphics Library, and the Quadro or professional cards, as they're called now, are really designed and optimized for OpenGL applications. GeForce or consumer cards are more directed at DirectX related, gaming type applications. So that's really one of the major differences, and I'll let Don also jump in because I'm sure he has some more details he'd love to share with you guys.
How'd you know, Scott? Thanks very much. So guys, the main difference between what used to be called the Quadro boards, and as Scott said, they're no longer Quadro. We've changed the name of the professional enterprise GPUs to be NVIDIA RTX. So you'll see things like NVIDIA RTX A4000 or the NVIDIA RTX A5500 that Scott was touting in the mobile workstation earlier. And really, the main difference between the GeForce boards and the Quadro boards, or the professional boards, is that we design and manufacture the professional GPUs ourselves. Whereas for the GeForce boards, we create a reference architecture and then allow other third-party manufacturers to create GeForce boards based on that. So you're getting all different kinds of things with the GeForce boards. You're getting something that aligns to our reference design, but you may not be getting the same bill of materials in that board. So you may get different performance or different behavior across product lines for a GeForce 3080 that's made by different manufacturers. You're definitely going to have different bills of materials on the board. Whereas with the NVIDIA RTX professional GPUs, you're going to get the same board. So that means for like an enterprise deployment of these GPUs throughout your enterprise, you're going to get predictable performance and behavior on every single workstation they're used on. Another difference is the quality assurance that the professional GPUs go through relative to the GeForce GPUs. They're put through much more stringent standards because they're expected to be able to run more like 24/7, whereas the GeForce boards aren't expected to be on all the time. So you should get better reliability with the professional boards than you do with the consumer boards. And as Scott said, the consumer boards are targeted at gaming. They're excellent, very fast for doing the kind of rendering that you expect to get for gaming that's important for gaming performance. And the professional boards, the drivers for those are configured more so that they give you perfect visualization of your design in applications like SolidWorks or SolidWorks Visualize. So you're going to get exactly, you're going to be able to see exactly what it is that you're designing there, instead of getting performance optimized approximations of the visualization that you might want for gaming. So really the professional boards are targeted much more to professional audience that need things to be up all the time, because downtime is going to cost too much money, and predictability across enterprise deployments. They are more expensive than the GeForce boards with similar GPUs, and that's the reason why. They get more care, they have a much larger infrastructure around them for support. People like me working with companies like Dassault SolidWorks to make sure that they work well, and that we provide new features for maximizing the user experience on those types of applications. That's really, that money just gets poured into our R&D to make your experience on those kind of boards better.
Yeah, thank you, Don. That was a great answer. And just to dovetail even further off of that, you know, of course, if you look at the certifications, you know, it's only the professional GPUs are certified for many of the reasons that Don spoke about. And then even more importantly is the support, right? If there's a bug in a consumer card driver, you know, there's no real guarantee when that's going to get fixed. Because of the professional cards and the relationship that SolidWorks, Dell, and NVIDIA have together, you know, if there's a bug reported, we're on it right away. You know, I'll be on calls with NVIDIA and a customer, and if we've identified a bug, and there, you know, the response time is much quicker. Bugs get fixed a lot faster for the professional cards, because we know, you know, you guys can't afford to have downtime. You're running a business, right? It's, if a gamer can't play a game for, you know, a couple of days, it's not going to be the end of the world, right? So just another example.
That's an excellent point, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, guys, let's see. Oh, looks like we have one or two more questions here. Can I get data sheet for above question? I think you're referring to the Quadro versus GeForce. I believe we do have some type of a data sheet. We'll see if we can follow up with you on that. And then our final question, and then we'll wrap it up. Is there a way to stack the mobile workstation for design performance and then plug into a desktop rack workstation tailored for simulation while using SolidWorks license? Not sure what you mean by stack, but the ways that you can use these together are a couple things. And we have users that do this. So, you know, and again, this goes back to kind of that, you know, the compute of interactive versus computational workload. So let's take an example. So for example, let's say you're using, you know, SolidWorks to do design work, which most of you are, and then you're also using simulation. And let's say you're going to use a mobile workstation to do both of your design work, and you know, maybe you're on the road, maybe you're working at home, but then you want to run some simulations on it, right? So you could, you know, just transfer that file to a tower workstation that is optimized for running those simulations with lots of cores. And so you can connect to that remotely using that PC over IP technology. You know, load your model on there remotely, and then just queue up the simulation or the rendering, whatever it might be, and take advantage of the power of the desktop or rack workstation. And then you can go back to doing your design work on your mobile workstation, right? And a lot of people do that. And sometimes they even share those kind of bigger, you know, tower or rack workstations, because you're not using it all the time. And, you know, so people will share those workstations when they need additional compute resources. Oh,
Yeah,
it looks we got one
go ahead and add
more.
on the SolidWorks side. SolidWorks, we have standalone licenses and network licenses. So if you did purchase a single standalone license, you would have to deactivate it on the mobile workstation and then activate it on the desktop or the rack workstation. So you'd have to deactivate it and activate each time. If you did use network licensing then you can point those to a license server. And then of course you could use it, as you're using SOLIDWORKS, it would be working. As soon as you closed it, it allowed that license to get back up on the license server, and then you could use it on your workstation on the desktop.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's a very important consideration, right? If you're going to take advantage of that. Thanks for sharing that, Stephen. Okay, so we'll take one final question that got in here, and then we'll close up. So somebody was asking if RAM improves SOLIDWORKS performance, and that's a great question. It can. And here's the typical scenario I see with SOLIDWORKS. Obviously, as your data set size, your models, your assembly complexity goes up, SOLIDWORKS will require more RAM to store that, right? And in two ways, actually. Not only your traditional RAM that's connected to your CPU, but also the amount of VRAM, video RAM on the graphics card to display the model. Okay, and so what my advice to you there is, again, use the Dell Optimizer tool to analyze your system utilization, and it will tell you how much video RAM and how much CPU RAM you're using with the various models as you load and unload them, right? And if you look at that information, that will tell you, whether adding more RAM will help. So if you're seeing where you're getting really close, like above 80% all the time or often in your RAM usage, then chances are you're going to see some performance gains by increasing the amount of RAM. And the reason for that is what happens is when you start running out of RAM, the computer does a thing called swapping. And as different resources are, asking for more RAM, your computer will automatically offload some resources out of RAM and temporarily store them on disk. And this is called swapping or paging. And then it will run a process, and then it will swap the RAM again to do the other process. And that swapping process in itself is very slow compared to having everything in RAM itself, because accessing data off of a storage device, even if it's an SSD, is a lot slower than accessing data that's already loaded into RAM. So that's what you want to look at. If you're seeing that happening a lot, swapping and a lot of RAM usage, then chances are increasing your RAM will help with performance. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for joining us for the webinar. I hope you found this very useful. Again, you will all get a copy of the presentation, and please, remember to visit the Dell GoEngineer Expert Network website for all of those great discounts, recommendations, and details about the program. And thanks to all the presenters. Everybody did a great job. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge. Have a great day, everybody.